Hello, my friend. February 27, 1973. I have an appointment with Claude Doucet at number 8 Boulevard Magenta, very close to where I would come to live 2 years later. He was the son of Max Doucet, the former radio host who was a national celebrity in the 1950s, with his big Groucho's Marx mustache under the name Dappy Max. Claude was associated with Nabil, a Lebanese trader with everything that came along, and friend of Nicole, who introduced me to them. They set up a business of artistic lithographies and telegraphs, then in full development, and proposed me to represent them in Brazil. I didn't know anything about the art market, but Claude calmed me down by showing me the tricks of the trade, quite simple to know, and reminding of my knowledge of art history acquired at the Beaux-Arts. They entrust me with a stock of works. I had become an art dealer. It suited me well. March 8, 1973. Last shot in architecture. I attend the swearing-in ceremony. I am registered with the Order of Architects. I will resign a few months later, when my Brazilian adventure will have defined my new artistic direction. March 21, 1973. As I was trying to broaden my possibilities about what I could do by going to Brazil, Paul, a Corsican neighbor, introduced me to her cousin Charles, who introduced me into the gemstone trade. He had opened a store selling what used to be called semi-precious stones, a name that has since been abolished. On his advice, I would buy in Rio a whole lot of different stones that I would find more beautiful one than the other without considering their financial value, and that I would smuggle through customs, having hidden them in my underwear. Back in Paris, I was disappointed when I learned that it was almost impossible to resell them to jewelers. The miners in Minas Gerais were almost all owned by lapidaries who entrusted the stores to jewelers. They would mount them on a piece of jewelry, and if they didn't sell it, they would simply return the stones to the lapidaries. I didn't do too badly, as I managed to sell them to France as the price I paid for them, but without profit. I gave up the idea of this business, and it was a long time later that I realized that this approach to the splendid stones was preliminary of those I would find described at the end of the book of Revelation. I have to tell you about Charles, with whom I became very friendly. He was 10 years older than me and belongs to a big Corsican family famous in the crime and banditry world. His father had participated in an act of piracy on the high seas in the Mediterranean by boarding a boat full of cigarettes belonging to other traffickers. This story can be found in books about the history of banditry. In the ensuing shootings, his ankle has both legs destroyed by a burst of machine guns fire and had to spend the rest of his life in a wheelchair, which did not prevent him to becoming the mayor of his village. His brother was linked into trafficking in case also made famous by the film French Connection and had been arrested by the police. He had managed to get out of the prison in Marseille to go to the hospital where he was kept permanently. In the middle of the night, in his pajamas, he has knocked out his guard with his fist and went to a car waiting for him downstairs. Coincidence? Charles has broken his arm in his apartment in Suresnes near Paris, which gave him an airtight alibi. But in fact, He had made the return trip from Paris to Marseille at night, driving at full speed, and had voluntarily broken his arm. What courage and what brotherly love! He did not tell me this story, which I suspected, but which became obvious when he asked me to give him my passport and that of a friend, which we went to declare lost a few days later. Much later, he invited me to Corsica in Ajaccio, where he had returned to live, to try to sell my electronic paintings animated with music to his friends' nightclub owners. With surprise, I discovered that he had become the owner of a private beach and hotel located near the Sanginas Islands, where I did not know him of financial means allowing him his purchase. He told me, jokingly, that he had acquired them as well as apartment in Ajaccio with a big smile. I do not know more, and I let you guess how he could do with such a pedigree. We went by car to the pubs in the surrounding village to meet people only men of a certain age. He had given me a 500 francs bill, for that I could buy a round of drinks, but we only drank water. He had warned me, you don't say anything, and they will think you are very smart, because you know how to listen. If you talk, even about interesting things, they will think you talk too much and will not trust you. I wondered what he was stirring for, and did not know until a few years later when I heard the news on the radio. A local elected official, whose name was given, that is Charles, after an altercation with his hairdresser, had gone out to get a shotgun from the trunk of his camp and had fired into the window, which he had smashed, fortunately without causing any victim. In fact, I was accompanied him in an election campaign in the Corsican way. The day before I left to go back to Paris, he invited me to go with him to a discotheque where he was going to meet some friends. When I saw them, I felt like I was with Tennessee clowns, as quite all in stripped suits. They took turns offering a round of champagne, which only dipped their lips in the glass, which then they emptied into the champagne bucket, bottle after bottle. When I went dancing, I recognized and greeted the steward who had served me during on the outbound flight. On the plane back home, I met him again, and he asked me if I knew who I was sitting with. As I didn't know, he told me that it was all Ajaccio's godfathers. April 1973. Departure to Zurich with Paula, and from there flight to Rio de Janeiro and the adventure that would change my whole life and give it a meaning.